All right. Well, greetings, everybody. Welcome once again to the Small Business webinar and podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fredlund. And as always, we're going to be recording this as a podcast for audio, but also if you are a member at smallbusiness.com, you can actually check out the video. Some of these will be doing some Q&A at the end as well. But if you want to see Lawrence, you're going to have to be a member. And if you don't know how to do that, just go to smallbusiness.com. We've got some great offers out there. But Lawrence Henderson is our guest today. He's going to be talking about why everyone loves a hot leader, which is humble, open, and transparent. Not to kind of ruin your whole shtick there, Lawrence. But let's bring him in here. Lawrence, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of get into your stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate, first of all, thank you so much, Steve, for allowing me this opportunity to talk to you and talk to this amazing audience of solopreneurs and just growing influencers in communities. And so I'm Lawrence Henderson Jr. I hail from the great state of Ohio, but I'm in Georgia with my beautiful wife, Japri, as way of the Army. And so I've transitioned out. It'll be 6 years at the end of January. I can't believe how time flies when you're having fun, or at least operating in business purpose. And so I've been in my business and owner operator of BOSS LLC, which BOSS is an acronym. As if you know any military folks, you know we love acronyms. It stands for Business Operational Support Services LLC. And how I came about being a solopreneur myself is after the Army. I liken to say I was jack of all trades, master of none, but somebody told me that was a bad thing out here. But I always held on to it like, nah, that's not a bad thing. And so I gave myself the big overarching business operational support specialist was what I used to call myself when I first transitioned out. But that helped inform the business name. So I love coaching, professional development coaching, leadership coaching, in the practice of doing corporate training, particularly in the areas of leadership, in organizational leadership. And then also I do a bit of speaking. So I got checked my box on one of my bucket list items to be a TEDx speaker. And so I did that several years back. So I'm super, super pumped about that. And I'm excited to share with you all today what it really means to be a hot leader.
Awesome. Well, I've already got like 35 questions written down here, but I'm curious, what was your TEDx talk about?
Yeah, it was following the leadership law to action. And the law, again, is an acronym for Life Agreement Will, which I put inside of my first book. And people always say, oh, I didn't know you had a book. Well, it was my book. And I launched it the day of the TEDx. But it was as a result of really flushing out that talk that I was able to put some final touches on what the book was supposed to be. And the book is actually a working self-coaching guide to transition. And it was something that I felt I needed to get out of me because I had such a hard time transitioning. And all you business owners out there, you'll get this one of just what is the identity of my business, of myself, and how much of a spiral I was going into. But it was the help of the community. It was the help of people, and me not believing I had to do it on my own that really helped flush out what was inside that book. And so it's a gift. It really was a gift, not only to myself to get it out of me, but also to share with others.
I love that. And I've done a TEDx myself too. And I think people don't realize how much effort it is to do a 15-minute talk. Like it's way easier to do an hour-long talk, right?
Oh yeah.
Versus a 15-minute, here's an idea worth sharing that the world needs to hear. That's tough. That's tough to do.
Yeah. And it's funny. You had 15. We had 12, but I did mine a little over 9.
Yeah.
So just to scale, and like you said, even in 15 minutes, right? You have all the life experience, all those things to drill it down to that amount of time. I mean, and people always say it, if you got an hour-long talk, cool, you got a deck, you got some other things, right. But to minutes, I mean, you're preparing for months to get that concise message out.
Every 15-second sentence, you're like, do we need this or not? Like you're really evaluating it. So what is the actual title of the book that you wrote?
Yes, it is called Bridging the Gap, Life, Love, and Leadership. And of course had to add an acronym in the title. Love being living our values every day. And so that's a section inside the book of what that really means. So
Okay, well, good stuff. So you guys check out the book,
Yep.
check out the TEDx, go search for that. But leadership coaching, corporate training,
Yep.
you're a solopreneur yourself. Now, have you been doing that since you left the Army, or was there
Yeah.
a transition, or did you kind of go right into saying, you know what, I need to teach leadership skills and I
Mhm.
want to do it under this umbrella of boss?
Yeah, so I actually launched Boss December 2015. So it was nine to 10 months after I transitioned out. And it really, I was doing sub work. So my last position in the Army, I was a contracting officer, uniform contract officer. And so I knew about business. I gave myself a goal when I got out and I said, you know what, in 5 years, in 5 years, I'm gonna be working for me.
Hmm.
But of course, coming out, I'm watching all these different contractors do all these different things. I never really understood. I was like, I thought I was going to be the vendor supplying toilet paper and supplies and product. Like I was going to be providing everything, is what I initially thought. But by way of going back to school, when I wasn't immediately employed upon getting out of the military, it launched me into this very purposeful work of organizational development, leadership coaching, and got my first coaching certification through John Maxwell. And then I was bit by the coaching bug. And then I started to inform myself about what it really meant to do training and development well. And particularly, I loved kind of the essence of seeing somebody get it. Maybe not for the first time, but getting it in a very authentic and meaningful way. And the light looks a little different, right? It's on, but it's like it turns into this daylight bright bulb when they really get it. And so that always drove me and provided energy for me. And so Boss was just subcontracting, doing work for different companies. And then 2020 was the first year. It was 5 years. I gave myself that I launched full time into Boss. Was the top of 2020. So go figure.
Awesome. I love you talk about the coaching bug too. That's sort of my
Yeah,
deal. I've
yeah,
told the story before, so I won't tell a long story. But yeah, I kind of out of the blue, somebody said, "Hey, do you do executive coaching?" I'm like, "Yeah," because I had just started out on my own. I'm like, I want to get paid, so yeah. And then I had to Google what is executive coaching, and then once I did it, I'm like, I love coaching because exactly what you said,
yep,
the light bulb comes on, and now
yep.
working with small business owners who think, well,
Hmm.
what can this outsider possibly know about my business? How can they possibly help?
Yeah,
You come in, you have a conversation, really, you just ask a lot of questions, and like
definitely.
you said, the light bulb goes on and they're like, oh, I get it. And that sounds like that's what you're experiencing in
Hmm.
the leadership thing. And so let's talk
Definitely.
more about that. Let's talk about this
Yeah,
this concept of, because again, I've got like 30 questions already written down. I got to stay focused. I told the people we talk about hot leadership, people are like, that's a
yeah,
sweet acronym. And now I know why you're big into acronyms.
yep,
But so talk about hot leadership. What is
yeah.
it? Why are you so passionate about it?
Definitely. And when you think about humility as the first letter in hot, people always think of me, oh, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to make it along. No, that's
Nice
not
and
humility.
quiet, right? Nice and
Nice and
quiet.
quiet, right?
Yeah.
No, humility says, I'm confident enough in myself and my abilities, but I'm okay with you being confident and okay with yours as well. Right.
Mm,
It's not thinking less of yourself. It's just thinking of yourself less. Right. And so that is a foundation to leadership to me. And you talk about being a business owner and different things like that. I want to interact with confident business owners, not arrogant. I want
right.
to have a conversation with Steve that says, you know what, Steve has something that I need. And I don't, well, if you give me a shot, I'll really prove it to you
Yeah.
that I'm worth the money. No, kind of like, you know what? I see a need in the business play, in the environment. I see a need in the community. And guess what? I can help you meet that need. This is how we do it. Right. And it's in that confidence in your own abilities that causes a connection. And all we really are, again, we're naturally pack animals. So to be a solopreneur doesn't mean you're always doing everything and you're all things for all people, but you're just saying, this is my space and I'm going to be excellent here. So that's humble in and of itself. I'm confident and I'm okay with others being confident as well around me.
So
And
good.
then,
That
yeah,
that's
go
a
ahead.
sorry, I'm cutting
Yeah.
you off.
No, no
You
worries.
said I could do that.
Yeah, no,
I'm writing
definitely.
down. I got my whole list of questions for the Q&A part. I'm trying to save some really good ones for the Q&A part. But like,
Hilarious.
I just think that's a tremendous insight. I don't want to just
Yeah,
pass over that too quickly
yeah,
because I think, at least for me, that's been a struggle of this humility. What is real humility? What is false humility? Where
yeah,
does humility start to border on the side of arrogance? But I've never heard that definition. I love that of saying
yeah,
it's what I wrote down. Tell me if I'm right. But
yeah,
it's I'm okay with my confidence and I'm also okay with your confidence.
definitely.
Like
Yeah,
that's cool because arrogance is almost like I'm okay with my confidence, but your confidence, no. This is about
Yeah.
me, right? Is that
Definitely. Yeah. And so
so good?
funny thing about that. And I have a funny story about, we talk about podcasting, we talk about other things. And I was looking for some guests for my own podcast and had this interaction with this person. And I always do meet and greets. Like, oh, and just it's a vibe, right?
Right.
I want to
Yep.
serve my community well and get those little Q&As. And their response was, I don't do Q&As. I've done over this amount of podcasts
Oh,
and I just show up. Well, they took it a step further. They not only said they just show up, they actually booked me for my podcast when it fit their schedule. I said, okay, so that's not a person I want to be in community with. Like,
that's not a hot leader, you're saying.
that's not a hot leader. He was not humble at all. And so, but again, that's your deal. If people interact with you there, kudos to you. But that's not the people I interact. You're confident and it exudes, and I understand that we're going to be good together. It's a vibe.
Awesome. And just to tease the Q&A, one of the things I want to ask you when we get there is something about, I've come from the corporate world, and there's plenty of arrogant leaders there, but they're still there and they're still moving up the ranks. And so we'll save that one, but I want to ask about how do we reconcile that? It looks like you got an opinion, but let's move on from humble. What else do we have in the hot leader?
Yeah, being open. There was one thing that I had to experience, and when I talk about leadership, one thing I tell people, leadership is a contact sport, and being humble, but also being open. Right now, understanding there's scales to openness. It's really saying I'm open to receive, I'm open to give information. And then here's the key part though, with open as being a hot leader, is to be open without expectation. Open without expectation. And I had to learn that one the hard way, is because on the military, every duty station I was assigned friends. Every duty station I was assigned people who got it. Right? We had the same mission, we had the same vision. I was assigned a purpose, mission, and direction. Well, on this side of life, I was trying to be open that same way with people who weren't skilled, with people who didn't have a context of what that type of openness looked like. And I never forget, my wife said, she was like, you friend too hard for people out here. And I was like, what does that mean? And she was like, you have an expectation and you're open with people from the word go because you had to. Which is like, out here, people like to learn you. People like to learn, like, yeah, too much, TMI, timeout. Like, and so it was like, I constantly was running into people that were calling timeout on my level of openness, my level of sharing, because I was like, I got to get to it fast. So you know how to vibe with me. We know how to go, because it may be a war soon. And I had to dial that back to say, hey, what level of open are you okay with? And then there just be an exchange, and then me allow you to be in that space. But me also be okay with saying, this is me. I'll give you a little bit. I'll spoon feed you instead of throwing a steak at you. And so that's what openness was for me. It was a common practice. It's a value for me.
That's so good. I love that. And that's another thing I want to ask about, is kind of how do you, maybe we can talk about it a little bit here, but how do you kind of get the lay of the land as a leader? And I'm sure it's different for different people, different styles, but kind of that question, let's say you're moving into a new role in your company, or you've now been promoted to the leader, you've bought the business, and now you got a couple of employees, and you kind of want to do this. You want to do the hot leadership. You want to be open. How do you kind of get the lay of the land of how open you should be? Is it more just, is it direct conversation, or how do you kind of dance that dance and say, I want to be open and transparent and authentic and all those things, but I don't know where that scale is for this group of people?
Yeah. So there was something, kind of leader model that I learned called kind of win-win agreements and win-win discussions, where you basically simply ask, hey, what's a good exchange for us? How do I help you be successful? What do you need from me to be successful? And this is, again, on the corporate side as a leader. It was something I had never experienced, like a leader asking, like,
right,
how do I be you want to be a resource for me? Like, and so it was a new thing, but no. And it was like, and they let me go first. And it's the same thing as we learn people. You begin through asking more than telling. Again, that's a coaching thing coming in.
Yeah.
You understand and begin to get insight on people's capacity. And so it's just like this conversation around, racial inequality and stuff that's happening in today's society. And people are, I run into parents all the time, like, how do I have this conversation with my kids? First of all, you need to find out what they're capable of understanding, or what do they understand about the topic, right? And it's the same thing with people. You can't go at somebody and say, as a solopreneur, and say, hey, I need you to be able to do SEO optimization and different things I just, you call me for virtual assistant, like, and you now want me to do SEO optimization and you want me to do web design. Like I just do calendars. Right. And so it's that exchange of just finding out capacity. And even with kids, I'm 6, mom, you didn't let me see the George Floyd video. Like, why are we talking about that? And like, it's capacity. And so leaders just like, it's okay, power down.
And I assume that's true. And sorry to catch up. That's true in like skill sets, but it's also
100%
in personality, right? Like 100%. In terms of, because there's introverts and extroverts. Like I'm thinking about times where I'm an introvert, I'm an actuary by trade. Like I just want my spreadsheets and my laptop and I'm good. Right. And to say, okay, now to put you in a situation where you're now in an open office workspace environment, like those so it's personality as well as skills, right? This same sort of thing, like the win-win agreements.
For sure. And even in, because I'm the pusher, right? I'm the leader who I like to stretch folks. And so even in that introvert extrovert conversation, it's even in that capacity of personality, how do you like it? How do you want to do it? Right. And then here's the thing with, again, coaching, asking permission. Hey, would you mind? Right. If I need you to do something from a multiplication standpoint of our team and skill in upskilling, I need to know, like, hey, do you even have an interest in this?
Right. Do you want to get there?
Before I lay it at your feet? Right. And so, because like you said, it's like, sometimes I'm not feeling people. Like I'm an extrovert, but since I've been out in the military, I'm moving more towards the middle of the spectrum. And there could be those times where I'm like, enough people. I need a cubby hole. And now I got a weighted blanket now for resting and stuff. I'm like, oh man, I go get under my weighted blanket. I'm done for the night. So it's just a match, just understanding people and asking permission. It's okay.
I love it. And it's open communication, right? That seems to be some of what one of these themes are that are running through all of this, is just talk about it.
Definitely.
Like talk about it and listen, not just tell, listen. I hear that so much. So love it. Humility, open. How do we complete the HOT?
Transparency.
Yeah.
I love it with this quote that I used to my soldiers would say I used to hit them over the head with, but bad news doesn't get better with time. And so when something happens, and again, people are mixing up this word. I don't know if you heard it a lot, authenticity.
Yep. I think I've already said it once.
Yes. But authenticity is not being disrespectful and obnoxious, and transparency is the same way. Transparency doesn't mean you just blah and verbal vomit on people. It's you are being transparent around accountability and ownership of what's happened, what you see coming. Because again, at the end of the day, I would love to believe I work with competent and confident professionals. In the world of solopreneurs, it's being able to say to a client or somebody, we're having an intake call, we're having an info session. I'm not going to say yes to you if I don't desire to do something. What I will say yes to is, hey, I know some people who I can connect you with that do that perfectly. I had to be transparent with myself from a desire standpoint, right? I didn't just quit that corporate job to come out here and beat my head against a wall just doing stuff for a check or an invoice, because that sent my first 6 months as the pandemic was coming down. Like I was trying to wrap my arms around everything, and there was a point, Steve, where I saw a picture of myself. Like I got some photos done in probably early June, and I had dark spots under my cheek, under my eyes, my face. Like I didn't recognize me. And I recall back and I looked back at that time and I was like, what was going on? I was trying to hug everything. I was saying yes to everything, and it was killing me. It was literally from the inside out killing me. And it was now beginning to have an outward appearance to where I was on a video call with some folks, and they just stopped and was like, Lawrence, what's going on? And like literally all of them, they were like, you don't look well.
Good for them. Good for
oh
them
my
for
gosh.
stopping you.
But that was the transparency part. We built relationship. And and again, that was the exchange of leaders to say, hey, how are we going to interact with each other? How are we going to experience each other? And it was really being humble, open, and transparent in how we communicated. And I had to become one, they helped me with awareness, but then it was being accountable and owning where I was. And it was in that moment that I began to just jot notes for myself. It was like, man, I was saying yes to stuff that I really didn't want to say yes to. And so that transparency, it could be life and death. If we think about that as entrepreneurs, and solopreneurs, as you're going, what are those things that are on your menu that you really don't desire to do? And maybe you now have created opportunities for others to come in and actually support your business. I don't know if you're familiar with the book called Traction by Gino Wickman. And early in that book, I took the assessment and kind of the capacity assessment. And had a 36 as a score out of 100. And so I'm like, I'm in the way. I'm in the way of my business growth. And so that for me was just like, we need to be transparent and check on the health of ourselves before we try to support anyone else. Because if we're not whole, there's no way you could be supplying excellent service.
And what I'm hearing in there is, I mean, there's a huge self-awareness piece that's necessary, but what transparency does is sort of allows for that to happen, right? By surrounding yourself, by being transparent in the right way with the right people, it sort of allows that self-awareness to manifest itself in a sense. You've created an ethos, right? You've created a culture of transparency back and forth, which allows you to be self-aware, I think, more than if you don't have that.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I mean, of course, most entrepreneurs or people who read probably have all the emotional intelligence books on their shelf. But it's really breaking down the elements of what emotional intelligent leaders really are. And in the first phase of that is self-awareness. And once you gain that awareness, again, it's not like I've arrived, I'm self-aware. No, then it becomes, okay, now that I have some awareness, how am I managing these things that I am now aware of? Because there are some other things that you still put in the box and kept in the box. And one of the other things that I had to become transparent about were the things, how I was compartmentalizing my life. I had fractioned off pieces of me where I was tactically and technically competent about business, about life, and all these other things. But there was areas around health. There was areas around nutrition. I put that in a box. That didn't come to play in these other spaces, but that was actually the part that I needed to be informed about the most. And again, being aware, I didn't have any context there. I didn't have any good upbringing. There was no consistency. There was no discipline. And so when I got transparent and I opened the guardrails to everything, I began to do a true evaluation of how I was showing up, not only as a business owner, but as Lawrence. And if we're going to be really hot, we have to make sure that we're bringing everything to play, right? And now that's really, I believe, what's happening in the world right now is we now have permission to bring our whole selves everywhere. And I really believe that's what's happening. Businesses are having conflict because they're like, time out. I hired a part of you. I didn't hire a whole you.
Right.
And that's the conversation that we're having with as we try to hire people, or we in exchange with clients was like, ooh, yeah, I need the other contractor to show up.
Right.
Not the whole one. I don't need you to be fully aware of who you really are.
That's a challenge, right? I mean, especially for people that are not used to that. They just kind of they want the task done. They want the person doing this. And now you've got the whole person. Like, what do I do with that? And for a lot of people, that's a whole new thing that they have to figure out. How do they manage that?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because there's there's a whole generation of children coming up, and they're in their 20 somethings, their early 20 somethings, this Gen Z group who have lived their entire lives with parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles who come home and say, you know what, when you get to work, you be authentic, you be whole, you don't let them fraction you off and let you be a shell of yourself. You be you. So what's happening is now this conflict is occurring because you have this whole wave of youth coming in, and even the bottom half of millennials are the same way, where you told me I could be me all the time.
Right.
And now that you're my manager or somebody your age, their parents' ages, their managers or directors in departments, they're like, nah, I don't care what you got told at home. Well, here, we just tell you to shut up and color. And they're like, nah. And that's where people, they quit. They want to be CEO today. Well, if I come home for the first 18 years of my life and all my parents are talking about is, hey, know your worth, know your worth, know your worth, know your worth, know your worth. And okay, I believe I'm worth the CEO's pay rate. Like, what do you, but it was access without understanding. And so when you talk about being a hot leader, it's really we now have to get in where I believe coaching as a skill set, a managerial skill set needs to be taught. And that was one of the fundamental things that frustrated me in my first several jobs in the corporate space, where I was having and anticipating leaders to be developed the same way I was in the military. And there was a total gap and divide in actual skill set. And so as leaders, there is a thing as managing up, and there is a skill set gap that we have to be aware of and that we need to talk about more. And there's an author that now I'm back in school getting my PhD in organizational leadership, Barbara Kellerman, who has done decades of work on leadership, and says we need to professionalize leadership instead of it just being a bullet on a position description. And really what she was talking about is building the muscle from a knowledge and then practical. So, and what I was finding is a lot of people have over the years have been promoted on the corporate side, but they have had no additional knowledge download so they could begin trying to practice. And it's after 20 years of being in a leadership position, somebody tries to send them to a course, or they say, you know what, you need a master, an MBA. Well, an MBA is an MBA. It's not leadership development. It's going to give you some other things about business and strategy and all these other things. But to build the skill of leadership, there needs to be a download of what it means to actually work with people, not widgets. And so that's
so good. And that leads into a question I want to ask you later in the Q&A, because that's sort of been my journey as an analytical in corporate world. You know, the best ones get promoted, or the people that have been there the longest get promoted, and they fail as leaders because we're not trained in how to be leaders. And so we go to an HR class, and that, okay, good. We're on the same page. We'll talk about that later. So, all right. So I want to wrap up this first part of it though, before we get to the Q&A. A few members have joined us, so I want to make sure we open it up for Q&A here in a little bit. But okay, so humility, openness, transparency. This is the hot leader that we're talking about. If you missed the first part of the episode, go back and listen as he's talking, as Lawrence is talking about, the books and that sort of thing. But so I think some people are going to be listening to this going, okay, that all sounds good.
Yep.
But I know I'm short in one or two or three of these areas. I'm not where I want to be, right? My humility is maybe a false humility, or it's on the other side. It's arrogance. My openness is not really true openness. My transparency is sort of, too much too soon, and people don't really know what to expect. I want to get better at this. I want to be a better leader. I want to, grow my small business. I want to increase my nonprofit leadership. Where do I start? I mean, your book seems like a good place to start, but where else, what should people be thinking about? What mindset should they get in? What's the next step for people to take that are saying, all right, I'm in, I want more of this. What do I do?
Yeah. So the first thing, I'm telling you, y'all, it's going to be really, really spooky where I'm going. What you really need to do first is you need to find who is your community and people that you give permission to be honest to you about feedback. So what does that look like? And why did I say the word permission? I believe feedback unsolicited, we have a natural tendency to be defensive about that feedback, but it's time for us to go first. It's time for us to ask for it from people who you believe will give you useful, constructive feedback. It may hurt, it may sting, because if you're not practiced in this feedback area, it's going to feel like swallowing glass. So you need to begin practicing. And again, it's about self-awareness, because People observe and they experience you differently than you might believe. And it goes with the exercise. And as simple as ask the 3 or 4 closest people to you and ask them to give you your 3 best qualities and traits. Before you ask them, write what you believe that they'll say. When you do that, you'll be amazed. You may be spot on, but I was amazed. And what's funny is the 3 people I asked, my wife, my brother, and one of my close, I call him my brother, is my wife's baby sister's husband. I called them 3 people, and I asked them. They all had synonyms of each other, but it was all the same 3.
Yeah.
Crazy enough, it wasn't the 3 I wrote. And it was like, but people experience us differently.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we think one thing, but it may be something totally different. So I would start there because that is a huge awareness exercise. And then when you want more context behind why they chose those things, ask them for tangible examples. When did they experience that from you? Right. And so again, you have to be prepared. So by you going first and you asking for that feedback will help not only build a muscle in you, but it'll also continue modeling leadership for others that they may be like, that was a good exercise. And they may, the ripples of it, right? Maybe that maybe not be the intention, but it ends up happening. So no, I would start there.
I love that. It's so good. It's part of it is I love that you're doing it yourself first. So you don't just see their answers and go, oh yeah, that's what I would have said. That's what human nature is, right? And then the other piece of just take the time and actually dig into that a little bit, become more self-aware. Don't just say, oh, that's interesting, they're different. I think that's an interesting piece to actually explore that. Say, why are they different? What are people experiencing that's different from what I feel like I'm presenting? I think that's an interesting self-awareness piece. Well, Lawrence, I want to flip over to the Q&A here in a little bit. But anything you want to close with, make sure that our people know, or how can they connect with you if they're saying, all right, I love this dude. I need to find out more about this. I need more hot leadership in my life, or I want to help somebody else that I know improve their leadership. What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, so best way to connect with me is through my email. It's my first name, Lawrence, LAWRENCE at bossconsultingllc.net. And that's personal connection. That's my real email. I answer my own emails for now. But then other ways is across social media. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Boss Lab, BOSSLLAB. And then if you're on LinkedIn, and if you're not a business owner, you're not on LinkedIn, you can find me there. Very active on LinkedIn. And if you desire to get your message out there about your business, you're another coach, trainer, speaker, I do lives every week. So I have access to that functionality on LinkedIn. So I would love to connect with you there. Would love to share my network. You can LinkedIn stalk other folks through my profile if you desire. And I would just love to connect with you.
I love it. Well, thanks for being so open about all of that. And I will put all that in the show notes. If you have any trouble finding Lawrence, get a hold of me. I will connect you with him. But let's wrap up the podcast piece. But hang on here, Lawrence. We'll do some Q&A with the members that are on here. But yeah, check out smallsmallbusiness.com if you have any questions about what it is that we're doing. We're doing individual memberships, but we're working with cities, counties, EDAs, associations, chambers, rotaries, whoever will partner with us to help their small business community. That's what we do. So check it out. Feel free to reach out to me personally, Steve at smallsmallbusiness.com, with any feedback, any suggestions. We're here to listen. We're here to help. So check that out. And so with that, we'll sign off on the podcast. But if you're a member, make sure you check out the Q&A piece through the membership site. All right, take care, everybody.